Good morning. The committee will come to order. I want to thank you all for being here today. We're holding the first of two hearings our committee will conduct this month concerning the reauthorization of the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs, or SBIR and STTR. Innovation is the energy that drives our economy. Technological breakthroughs and the entrepreneurship it spurs build our economy by finding state-of-the-art solutions to difficult problems and marketing those new products. This correlation is particularly important in the small business arena. Small businesses tend to be more nimble, responding to market changes more rapidly than their bigger counterparts, and they drive the innovation sector and make us more agile in the global economy. It is that recognition of small firms' ingenuity that led Congress to establish the SBIR program back in 1982 and the STTR program in 1992. These programs set aside a portion of federal research dollars for small businesses. Spanning 11 participating agencies such as the Department of Defense, National Institutes of Health, and the National Science Foundation, the development dollars set aside for small businesses are critical for both the small business companies that use the grants and the federal agencies that seek innovation to the problems that they encounter. Whether it is a new software system for tracking contract payments, a new medical device to help with cancer treatment, or a new piece of technology that saves lives on the battlefield, the SBIR and STTR programs have consistently delivered results across all agencies. In this era of globalization, making it easier for small businesses to develop and commercialize new innovative products is essential for America's competitiveness and national security. That is why programs like SBIR and STTR are so important. Small innovators have always been at the cutting edge of science and technology. These are the entrepreneurs who have the kind of mentality to take big risks in search of big rewards. But the next big thing doesn't just materialize. It happens with a lot of sweat equity and late nights. Ideas matter, but executing those ideas is what's most important. That's where the SBIR and STTR programs come in. The very competitive and phased system of these programs allows for a relatively small initial federal investment to help entrepreneurs cultivate a concept, often being the first place prospective entrepreneurs go to find seed funding. The SBIR and STTR programs allow initial testing and further development of that idea. If it appears the idea has merit, the company can compete for a much larger award to develop that idea further and work toward making it a commercial success. These programs were last authorized back in 2011. In order to give entrepreneurs stability and predictability, we're getting a jump start on reauthorizing them before next year's deadline. Today, we have a very distinguished panel of government witnesses who are ultimately involved in their agency's SBIR and STTR programs. We look forward to hearing about your programs and your suggestions of how we can make these good programs better. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here, and I would now like to yield to the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since their establishment in 1983, the SBIR and STTR programs have helped launch tens of thousands of successful research projects. During this time, they have awarded nearly $40 billion, making them a critical source of funding for small, innovative firms. As a result of these programs, breakthroughs have been made in a wide range of sectors, from agriculture to energy to healthcare. In turn, these discoveries have generated economic growth and the job opportunities that come with it. In 2011, Congress enacted a reauthorization of these programs. One of the primary outcomes of the legislation was a greater focus on commercialization. Such a focus is necessary if we are to ensure that the programs remain a catalyst for just not innovation, but also the economic empowerment and job creation that are associated with these scientific advances. During today's hearing, I am especially interested in understanding how the reauthorization's various commercialization initiatives have played out and if they are, in fact, resulting in more successful endeavors. In a similar context, the legislation required agencies to track those opportunities that continually win Phase 1 awards without progressing to Phase 2. I look forward to reviewing this data. Among the most notable changes were increases in permissible award sizes. In theory, this should provide agencies with more flexibility to make larger awards to the most promising innovations. However, I am concerned as we have seen a decline in the overall number of awards. Understanding the trade-offs here are important, and we need to understand what is preferred: fewer, larger size awards, or more awards of lower value. There are also two perpetual issues that continue to raise concerns. One is that the programs remain concentrated in just a few states. Altogether, the top 10 award states receive over half of the number of awards and half of the dollars. This results in programs that are largely serving just a handful of states, while others receive very little benefit from it at all. This is a perennial issue that continues to warrant this committee's attention. Similarly, concerns exist that the participation of women-owned and minority-owned firms has been declining. Just like with geography, when it comes to demographics, it is important that SBIR and STTR are serving all entrepreneurs, including women and minorities. This is especially important as reaching these groups is the only stated objective of the program that is not currently met. Finally, I know there is much discussion about the duration of the authorization period for these programs. In the past, Congress' inability to pass a bill created great stress at the agencies and among small businesses. I understand and recognize these legitimate concerns. However, SBIR and STTR are statutory programs and rely on Congress to make changes. As a result, it is crucial to have regular legislative oversight of the programs. This means having an authorization period, such as the current 6th year, which permits Congress to implement updates that reflect the evolving nature of technology and the economy while still giving participants certainty about the programs. During today's hearing, I hope that we shed light on this issue so that we can begin to evaluate how the changes included in the 2011 reauthorization are performing. The reauthorization window is upon us, and it is critical that we know what is and isn't working. We know the value that the SBIR and STTR programs have in fostering innovation. While they continue to do so, we must oversee these programs regularly. And for that reason, I thank all the witnesses for being here and the chairman for calling this hearing. I thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. And I'd now like to explain briefly the timing system. We operate under the 5-minute rule. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's kind of like a traffic light on your desk there. Green light means go, you can talk. You'll get a yellow light warning there. It'll let you know you got about a minute to wrap up, and then the red light will come on, and you're supposed to stop. Most people do, but some people go on. If you wouldn't mind wrapping up close to that, we'd appreciate it. We'll give you a little leeway. And I'd now like to introduce our very distinguished panel here this morning. I'll begin with our first witness, John Williams, who's the Director of Innovation and Technology for the Office of Investment and Innovation at the SBA. Mr. Williams' primary responsibility is to oversee federal policy implementation and programmatic oversight of the Small Business Innovation Research, the SBIR, and Small Business Technology Transfer, STTR, programs across all 11 participating agencies. Prior to joining the SBA in December of 2014, Mr. Williams served as the Director of the Navy SBIR and STTR programs. Through his leadership, the Navy led the way in supporting the acquisition and transition of SBIR and STTR seeded technologies, awarding more Phase 3 contracts than the rest of the DoD combined. Following witness will be Dr. Barry Johnson, who is Division Director of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships, or IIP, at the National Science Foundation. In this role, Dr. Johnson fosters partnerships in advanced technology innovation, IIP, and it invests in science and engineering research across all disciplines that have the potential for high impact in meeting national and societal needs. He came to the National Science Foundation following his tenure as a Senior Associate Dean for the University of Virginia, where he was also the L.A. Lacey Distinguished Professor of Engineer. And after that, we will have Dr. Matthew Portnoy, who's with the Department of Health and Human Services and the National Institutes of Health's SBIR and STTR Program Coordinator. Dr. Portnoy and his staff provide scientific program management and oversight, support conferences and scientific meetings, ensure that NIH extramural staff are trained to meet the demands of their job, and communicates funding opportunities and critical information concerning NIH's programs, policies, and procedures to the biomedical research and training community. We welcome you here as well. And finally, we'll have Mr. Bob Smith, who's Director of the SBIR and STTR programs for the Department of the Navy. He's charged with assisting small businesses in getting their technology fully developed, tested, and inserted into the products and services used by our naval warfighters. Previously, he was Director of Disruptive Technologies for the Office of Naval Research and Program Manager for the Navy's Rapid Innovation Fund, which supports small business concerns rapidly inserting their technology and acquisition programs of record. A retired Marine Corps officer with over 3,000 flight hours in various military aircraft, he was the 2013 recipient of the Department of the Navy Loretta B. Stinson Advocacy Award, one of the annual Navy Acquisition Excellence Awards. As you can see, we have a very distinguished panel here this morning by hearing their bios there. So thank you very much for being here. And Mr. Williams, we'll begin with you. You have 5 minutes.
Chairman Chabot, Ranking Member Velazquez, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here today to discuss the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs, affectionately known as America's Seed Fund. Last month, SBA Administrator Maria Contreras-Sweet discussed the state of entrepreneurship at NASDAQ headquarters in Times Square. This unprecedented opportunity gave SBA a wonderful platform to explain the importance of small business on the American economy. The administrator highlighted the great value of the SBIR program and how it harnesses American ingenuity to solve big issues. The SBIR program drives innovation in areas ranging from national security to public health to food and space exploration. In the financial tech capital of the world, SBIR was recognized as the institution which creates and provides opportunity through SBIR seed funding to tens of thousands of small high-tech firms. And NASDAQ is the proper place to begin the discussion of SBIR because it represents the ultimate aims of the program: growing innovation, job growth, and business growth. So today we are here going to speak a lot about oversight, reporting, and compliance, but we must not miss the point that the return on investment from SBIR is truly astounding. The combined market caps of just 2 SBIR firms, Qualcomm and Biogen, is $120 billion, triple that of what American taxpayers have invested in the program over the lifetime. And our next generation of companies with SBIR funding are developing game-changing technologies like Mango Materials, headed by a female PhD out of Stanford, a company tackling waste reduction through a novel process of creating truly biodegradable plastics from methane waste. And Made in Space, a company pioneering the use of 3D printing on the International Space Station to support extended space exploration. SBA works very closely with the agency's program managers and external stakeholders to ensure that the intent of Congress is carried out in the operations of the program. It is critical to remember that although there is one SBIR program policy directive issued by SBA, it guides programs at 11 different agencies with varying missions, directives, and goals, as well as their established yet different models and methods for executing the programs. Thanks to this committee, the program was reauthorized in 2011, and since reauthorization, SBA has successfully issued 5 major interagency policy committee reports on outreach, commercialization, award size flexibility, evaluation frameworks, and the SBIR.gov public and government databases. We have implemented, with agency support, over 60 legislative changes directed by that reauthorization. We recommended and built out our new SBIR.gov business intelligence platform. We coordinated and led a highly successful outreach campaign hitting 22 states across the country in 2015 through our SBIR road tours and regional events. And we have accomplished a great deal with a limited budget, but there is more work to be done. The committee asked us to speak on the potential improvements to boost commercialization, improve data collection and reporting, while limiting paperwork burden. I have some summary thoughts on these. Commercialization was improved by the 2011 reauthorization, but more definitely can be done. Firms are severely limited in using SBIR funds to support activities that help commercialize the firm's products and services like market assessments, patents, and scale-up. Agencies are still struggling to report Phase 3 award activity and in establishing goals and incentives to increase Phase 3 activity within their agency. And we need to look at other ways agencies, especially DoD, to make more funds available for the needed test and evaluation or technology maturation, which moves the technology from a Phase 2 to a Phase 3. On data collection, we are much better off than we were in 2011. SBA and the agencies have all worked hard to implement many new data fields that Congress requested us to collect. I strongly encourage you all to look at SBIR.gov to see the amount of data that is now available in real time. But this is still work in progress and continues to require funding and time to get where we want to be. Limiting the paperwork burden continues to be a challenge where I don't believe that we have made much progress. While this is a goal of the reauthorization, so too was increasing the data collected and adding tools to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse. Another challenge here is that most agencies require SBIR applicants to apply using the same processes that their major universities or large businesses do. There are some organizations like DoD that has a special submission portal and NSF with their FastLane site that are more small business friendly than grants.gov. But more can and should be done to help standardize the proposal template and submission process. I also think we need to focus on the time it takes to move from proposal submission to award, especially between Phase 1 and 2 when the firm is expected to hold staff in place while they're waiting for funding. As SBA's Director of Innovation and Technology, I will continue to work closely with our sister agencies to make sure that the SBIR and STTR programs are top priorities across the federal government. I will hold agencies responsible for the allocations required by statute, and I will continue to work with you to improve these programs. They are true gems, and we must make sure our small businesses know about these opportunities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify regarding the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs at the National Science Foundation. As mentioned, my name is Barry Johnson, and I'm Director of the Division of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships in the NSF Directorate for Engineering. In this role, I have oversight responsibility for the SBIR and STTR programs at NSF. For ease of communication, I will use the term SBIR program to refer to the collective SBIR and STTR programs. The SBIR program is an integral part of the NSF strategy to stimulate innovation and address societal needs through the commercialization of the results of research. We fund small businesses at very early stages when the technology risk is high and before the private sector is normally willing to invest. Since NSF is not the ultimate customer of the innovation stimulated by the SBIR program, the NSF SBIR research topics are oriented to the needs of the marketplace and the nation as a whole. In 1998, NSF SBIR introduced a new supplemental program called Phase 2B as a platform to stimulate NSF-funded active Phase 2 grantees to attract private sector funding for further technology commercialization. The Phase 2B proposal is submitted while the company is conducting the Phase 2 research, and with Phase 2 research underway, the small business is better positioned to attract investors because most of the early stage technology risk has already been addressed with NSF funding. The Phase 2B program requires that third-party commitments be double the level of supplemental funding from NSF, up to a maximum of $500,000 from NSF. The Phase 2B supplement was initiated to further fill the gap between the funding from an NSF Phase 2 grant and the funding ultimately required to achieve successful commercialization. The supplemental funding from NSF ranges from $50,000 to $500,000. Third-party investors include both public and private sectors. For supplements over $250,000, the small business must participate in a reverse site visit to NSF with its investor. In addition to providing funding, we also assist our awardees by providing them with an educational component based in part on the NSF Innovation Core, or so-called I-Core program, that helps entrepreneurs and their small businesses understand market needs and customers, thus increasing their their chances of successfully commercializing new technologies. The NSF SBIR program is also staffed with a team of program officers with strong technical backgrounds in the areas supported by the program and with business experience in large and small organizations. The SBIR program officers generate the topics, review the proposals, manage the awards, and provide significant mentoring for the grantees. NSF monitors the commercial outcome of our Phase 2 awardees and has found that 32% of the NSF SBIR grantees were fully successful in that they have at least $1 million in revenue 6 years after completing the NSF SBIR Phase 2 award. Companies note strong intellectual property positions, strong academic collaborations, and strong ties to market leaders as major reasons for success. The success rate for companies receiving Phase 2B awards using this same measure was 65%. The impact of the Phase 2B program on success rates is thus very significant. The National Academies, in their recent report on SBIR at the National Science Foundation, found similar commercialization impacts of the NSF Phase 2B program. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my testimony. On behalf of the National Science Foundation, the SBIR program, and our awardees, I want to thank you for this opportunity to highlight a program that provides small businesses with the means to keep America on the forefront of innovation. I would be pleased to provide any additional information that would be useful to you in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the chair would note that perhaps we need to apply for an SBIR loan so we can get higher name thingies out there so we can actually see them here. But in any event, Mr. Portnoy, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Chabot, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Matt Portnoy, and I'm the coordinator for the Department of Health and Human Services, SBIR, and STTR programs. My remarks today will primarily focus on NIH because our agency represents 98% of the department's programs. However, my office coordinates closely with the CDC, FDA, Administration for Community Living, and the Administration for Children and Families, our sister HHS agencies that also fund the programs. HHS is the second largest funder of the programs and the largest federal supporter of biomedical research. The NIH, SBIR, STTR programs are ideally suited for creating research opportunities for U.S. small businesses to stimulate technological innovation. Examples of successful NIH SBIR-funded technology includes the Lift Labs Liftware that creates stabilizing technologies to help people with essential tremors and Parkinson's disease, and Senestech, which has technology to manage rodent populations using a non-toxic approach that limits reproduction. I'm pleased to tell you that the implementation of the changes included in the Reauthorization Act of 2011 are complete. This year, NIH increased its set-aside for both programs to 3% and 0.45% respectively. The overall budget for the programs has increased from $680 million pre-reauthorization to the current set-aside of $877 million, an increase of nearly $200 million. NIH and HHS continue to meet and exceed the required set-aside spending each year as found by annual GAO reports. We have greatly increased our outreach efforts the past several years. We continue to partner with the NIH Institutional Development Award, or IDEA programs, to reach underserved small businesses and idea states, and have increased outreach to women-owned and minority-owned businesses. The last 3 years, we have reached over 24,000 individuals from all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico, including nearly 1,000 women-owned small businesses and 650 minority-owned businesses, as well as efforts targeting all 23 IDEA states and Puerto Rico. We anticipate increased applications from these groups, further diversifying the program. NIH issued its first direct Phase 2 SBIR solicitation in 2014 and made our first awards in 2015. Success rates, as predicted, track along with Phase 1 and are 19% for a total of 65 awards made last year. NIH and CDC recently launched their Commercialization Readiness Pilot Program, or CRP, in the fall of 2015. Our first receipt dates for these applications was this past January 2016, with awards to be made this summer. NIH has also implemented the STTR Phase 0 Proof of Concept Centers through the NIH Research, Evaluation, and Commercialization Hubs, or REACH program. And I issued 3 REACH awards in 2015 to the University of Louisville, the University of Minnesota, and a consortium of 4 institutions called the Long Island Bioscience Hub. We've held a kickoff in April 2015 to share the best practices learned from the NIH Centers for Accelerated Innovation, a similar program funded by 2 of our institutes and co-funded by the Phase 0 Authority. In 2015, NIH's average time from receipt to notice of intent to award was less than 200 days, well below the 12-month requirement. And we have implemented significant changes in our business practices to continue to shorten this time period. HHS is grateful for the recent extension of the Administrative Fund Pilot Authority through the end of fiscal 17. HHS has spent 0.9 to 1.5% of our SBIR set aside per year towards a variety of activities, including in the increased outreach efforts I mentioned above, participation in co-funding of the SBA Road Tour, streamlining our award cycles, increased support for commercialization, funding the mandated National Academy studies, which found our programs are meeting goals with the exception of the outreach to minorities and women, and providing support for new programs, to name a few. These activities would not have been possible without these additional funds and would need to be severely curtailed or eliminated without permanent funding. HHS appreciates the flexibility to fund awards at appropriate budgets that may exceed the established guidelines if the science proposed warrants such an exception to ensure successful outcomes. HHS offers a suite of technical assistance programs, including our Niche Assessment Program, Commercialization Accelerator Program, and a life science-focused pilot of the NSF I-Corps program. In conclusion, the HHS, SBIR, and STTR programs seek to fund the most scientifically promising projects for which private and public funds are not traditionally available, and we strive to leverage our portfolio across the biomedical enterprise. This concludes my statement. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Smith, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Chabot, Ranking Member Velazquez, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and discuss small business innovation research and small business technology transfer. The Department of the Navy greatly values our SBIR STTR program because we're taking a great program and making it better by improving the business of the science. Small business and industry value our program because of the continuous outreach to create new business and science opportunities. Through SBIR, STTR, American small business throughout your states have proven over and again their ability to provide lean, agile, and innovative solutions to our warfighter requirements, to help our service deal with the biggest challenge of its defense and humanitarian missions. As Mr. Sean Stackley, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Research, Development, and Acquisition said, quote, "Small business and competitive, healthy small business, industrial base are vital to the long-term success and affordability of the department, as well as our national security. The evidence is overwhelming where affordability is paramount. A strategy that includes small business creates affordable outcomes and promotes innovation and technical advancement," end quote. I wish I had more time to talk about the incredibly innovative SBIR STTR firms participating in the Navy's program. Aggressive, dedicated, responsive, and resourceful are just several of the adjectives I would use to describe these incredible businesses. 2 examples of outstanding Navy SBIR STTR contributions to our military and our nation are Emily and Automated Celestial Navigation. The Emergency Integrated Life-Saving Lanyard, called Emily, is a robotic lifeguard deployed worldwide by Hydronics, a rural Arizona company. Several of Emily's technology derived from a 1991 Office of Naval Research STTR project to track well migration. The tracking system, reconfigured as the Silver Fox unmanned air vehicle, was deployed in 2007 to provide convoy protection to Marines in Iraq, saving lives. The same basic technology package, reconfigured as Emily, is supporting first responders throughout the U.S. and other nations and saving lives today in the Mediterranean Sea refugee crisis. Trex Enterprises' automated celestial navigation system provides a solution in GPS-denied environments through a fully automated star tracker for imaging individual stars both day and night to enhance navigation capability. Initially focused on Navy challenges, ACN attracted attention across the government, the result being a fellow agency ordering 15 systems with applications in crime fighting and drug interdiction. Over the last 6 years, using its non-SBIR funds, the Navy has invested an average of over $500 million a year in SBIR STTR technologies. This investment, we believe, leads the Department of Defense and the federal government. There are 4 primary factors that have made the Navy's SBIR STTR program successful. Culture. Our naval acquisition community considers SBIR STTR part of the solution for delivering quality innovations to our warfighters quickly and cost-effectively. Teamwork. With emphasis on delivering solutions to the warfighters, our dedicated professionals make continual improvements to small business performance through our proven SBIR STTR transition program and its annual forum. The forum, being conducted currently with the Sea Air Space Symposium, will happen 16 through 18 May at the Gaylord at the National Harbor. I'd be honored if you and your staffs can come by and have a visit with us. Moreover, the Department of the Navy guidance is aligned with the Department of Defense Better Planning 3.0. As I mentioned in my testimony before the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, I believe that although we collect and report an incredible amount of information on the SBIR STTR programs, we are not providing you the data that you need. I recommend a data summit where we collectively identify the information needed to effectively run the program, determine how to effectively collect that data, and rapidly provide needed reports on the execution of the program. Performance, as mentioned above, led former Secretary Stackley Jack Gansler to tell the Senate Armed Services Committee recently that SBIR STTR should be made a permanent program. The Department of the Navy continues to seek improvements in our program and to seek a more diverse vendor base, increase small business integration into the Navy business, and leverage small business advances for Navy requirements. I look forward to working with you and your staff regarding the importance of SBIR STTR authorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We thank all the panel members, and now we'll take 5. We're under the 5-minute rule too, so we'll each get 5 minutes, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Williams, I'll begin with you if I can. Across agencies, what is being done to improve the data collection and dissemination? The 2011 reauthorization required a great deal more reporting to the SBA and also to us here in Congress. What are you doing to help improve the data collection efforts across the agencies? And also, you had mentioned how unsuccessful basically we've been in reducing paperwork. If you'd like to comment on perhaps something else we might try where it hasn't necessarily worked in the past.
Well, I'll start with the paperwork. I'll start with the paperwork side, which is a challenge, but most of that, I believe, falls outside of the chain of command of the SBIR program offices. It's more in the head of contracting and head of granting organizations. The way a proposal needs to be submitted and the things that need to come along with that are driven by FAR and DFAR and by those communities. So I think one of the challenges is, and understandably, you've been trying to put that emphasis on us, which we've tried to do, but there's only so much the SBIR program management community can do. And I think those other communities are tasked with kind of establishing how contracting is done, and that's where most of the paperwork happens. So that might be an approach to maybe ask how they can reduce some of those things. But I do think in trying to then make common proposals and things like that, so at least one form is working, maybe not across the board, but at least for 80%. So we can work on those things. As far as data collection, we've done a lot. So when the legislation happened, we had a pretty old system at SBA in data collection, and so we've modernized that system, and we've spent a lot of time and effort to develop that system, and then portals so that the data can get pushed by the agencies. The challenge has been we have about 150,000 records, and each record has over 70 fields, so it's a massive amount of data, and when you add additional requirements, you have to tag those to the original records. And so it has been challenging, but we've made a lot of progress, and the agencies have been very successful and helpful in trying to, because they have to push it to us and we have to check and all that. So we're making great progress, but there is more to be done.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, I'll move to you next. And first of all, thank you for your service in the Marine Corps. We appreciate it very much. The 2011 reauthorization bill, among other things, authorized the Department of Defense to establish goals to increase SBIR technology transition and to use incentives to encourage prime contractors to meet those goals. Has the DoD at large implemented these provisions?
Chairman, I know they're working it. I haven't seen specific goals. I do know the DoD instruction for Acquisition 5002 has been changed and modified to reflect that you will have small business goals. I don't think there's been a specific metric applied to those major acquisition programs. I know we're discussing a metric, but like all other people, it's hard even within the Department of Defense to have one single metric that matters. Is it phase $3? Is it value to the warfighter? Is it lives saved? It's hard to measure some of these things, and collecting that data to make a management decision, it can be incredibly difficult.
Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Portner, let me go to you next. You mentioned that you encourage small businesses to submit their own proposals that fit your mission as opposed to having them all respond to your solicitations. Could you talk about how that process works a little more?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In fact, we do both. We have what we call a parent solicitation, which accepts investigator-initiated applications. This is where small businesses can propose any technology that fits within our mission space, so any life science or biomedical, biobehavioral technology. And we don't presume to know where the best or the next best innovation will come, so we leave it to the community and entrepreneurs to tell us that. About 70% or so of our applications and awards are what we call investigator-initiated. The remainder are in response to specific funding calls where we put out more targeted topics via both grants and contracts, where we've identified a more specific need for one of our or more of our institutes to accomplish its mission.
Thank you very much. I've got a little bit of time left. Dr. Johnson, I'll move to you before my time runs out. As you mentioned, the National Science Foundation, isn't the ultimate customer of the innovation stimulated by the SBIR program. Could you talk a little more about how the SBIR programs focus on commercialization, supplements the basic and applied research being done at the NSF?
Yes, sir. We are, as you know, a lot of NSF's funding goes into the support of fundamental research, and one of our goals is to actually transition that fundamental research out into commercialization. And so we emphasize with our SBIR program, not only in the review process, not only the technology and the quality of that technology, but we also bring business reviewers into that process to review the proposal for commercialization opportunities. And so they are looking at it with the eye of a business individual to determine if there is a market, if that market can be served by this particular technology, and if this team and the idea that's being presented has the capability to ultimately achieve technology commercialization success.
Thank you very much. And my time's expired. I'll now yield 5 minutes to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Johnson, the NSF has a very successful Phase 2B program whose participants commercialize at high levels. According to the Academy study, 81% of projects that receive a sequential award under the program achieve some levels of sales. What about the program makes it so successful?
I think part of what makes it so successful is that we have a public-private partnership in that Phase 2B. We have private investors or private partnerships for that particular small business that are coming to the table to actually help the company either through investments, purchases of the product that that particular company is providing, and help with the commercialization. So I believe that ultimately it's the public-private partnership that exists within that Phase 2B program that is critical to its success.
So your Phase 2B requires a 2-to-1 match.
Yes.
Right, of a third-party investment to SBIR dollars. How has this component of the program helped business commercialize the research?
I think one of the ways that it helps is that investors are constantly looking for ways that they can get more money for their investment or more effort for their investment. And so
What do you think is the key to replicating the success in other agencies?
well, I think that the program is time intensive. It does require significant effort on the part of our program officers because in most cases we are doing site visits at NSF where we bring the team in. We have a couple of hour presentation by the small business. We talk to their investors. So I think it's a time intensive nature to this particular program, and I think that's the key to replicating it at other places.
Okay, Mr. Smith, thank you. We have seen at DOD that there is a particular hardship in transferring the technology over from research phase to incorporation in the field. In fact, GAO couldn't even assess the extent of tech transfer because the data isn't being collected. How is the Navy addressing the issue of ensuring successful tech transfer?
Ma'am, we do most of that when we start making these agreements on who's going to fund the 2.5s, the subsequent phase 2s. The same thing, we have technology transition agreements where the parties agree, this is the research I'm going to do, here are the funds I'm going to bring to it, and if successful, this is the program where this technology will be inserted.
So can you explain to me why is it that the GAO report basically is saying that it's difficult to even assess?
Because we don't track that individual component. So it's sometimes hard to say, where did that component go within the system into the platform? So it can be difficult to track an acquisition who's building my carrier or my aircraft to understand where that chip or that algorithm from the small business eventually ended up.
Why is it so difficult to track? We need data, you know.
Yes, ma'am.
And in order to exercise our role in terms of oversight and see what is working and what is not, we need to have the data.
And one of those is a temporal challenge, ma'am, because it can take 5 to 7 years to transition to technology. So those are resources to track an individual research effort along its progression. And when does it get to a program or then off to another program? And it's just difficult. And we don't have the resources to track 5, 10 years.
Talking about data, Mr. Williams, SBA has published guidance on benchmarks for phase 1 to phase 2 transitions. The goal of these benchmarks is to prevent the same companies from continually winning phase 1 awards without progressing to phase 2. Are agencies enforcing these benchmarks? And if so, have there been any cases where a company was made ineligible for the year?
Yeah, so that's been implemented across all the agencies. The rate is 25% of your phase 1s have to go to phase 2. If they don't, you cannot submit a proposal for a year. That's implemented across all the agencies. And it's about 6 to 12 companies a year that will fall into that. Some of them have actually graduated.
The agency is keeping track?
Yeah, we push the information to the agencies. We contact the firms, and then we push that information to the agencies of the firms that are on that list for the year.
Mr. Williams, in the last reauthorization, the use of the 3% funds to cover administrative costs was an issue, and was an issue for me. And so the pilot was recently extended. The committee has yet to see any reports from SBA. We don't know the effectiveness of the pilot and whether agencies are using this fund on allowable costs. Why should we continue to allow for the SBIR funds to be used for administrative costs when we cannot even sure if the funds are used as it was stated?
The gentlelady's time's expired, but you can answer the question.
So quickly, I committed to submitting that report by the 30th of June to Congressman Moulton the last time I was here, and I will do that. We're working on that.
That will cover 2012,
That will cover up
2013?
to,
2014?
well, it started in 13, 14, and
Right.
15, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so we'll work on that.
thank you.
The gentlelady's time's expired. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Blukemeyer, who is who is the vice chairman of this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I can solve your problem with not being able to see this. If you just issue pillows to everybody, we could sit up higher. We could see over the top of the deck here. Okay. In all seriousness, thank you guys for being here this morning. Good stuff. Appreciate your participation and your information. Mr. Williams, you deal with these programs every day. Can you tell me how we can improve them? And my question is, I know you've talked about the data collection already. What about things like tax benefits or treatment of the, is there a way to improve the way the small businesses, innovating folks can have a better tax advantage to be able to do some of this, and or perhaps maybe the size of the awards, is it too small, too large, and the speed with which the awards are given, is it going too slow, too fast? Can you give me some ideas on some of those right quick?
No, because it's hard, but yeah, I'll do my best. So I think what we've been able to do the administrative dollars, which have really helped us address all those areas. But why I say no is that what we found is there's no one size fits all. NSF does things a certain way, but even within NSF, a software project is different than a materials development project that's different than a health project. And so trying to have one way and expect a phase 1 to go to phase 2 to go to phase 3, we know doesn't work. And that's why you have to have flexibility. Some will need more money. I think, funding in increments. And so if something doesn't pan out, we cut it off and we put more money in other things, but you do need more money in certain projects. And then you have to be able to assess that with the expertise at the agency to say, wow, this has transitioned, a program of record is coming forward. So the answer is it takes more management. And what's unique about SBIR is the program makes all the money go to the small businesses and not the government entity to spend any in-house. So that's where the 3% helped a lot, and we're doing more with that.
Okay, quick question. What percentage of applicants are awarded money?
So for phase 1, it varies a little bit, but it's on average about 15% of the phase 1 proposals that come in are awarded, and then it's about 40 to 50% of those go from phase 1 to phase 2.
Okay.
And then about that go to phase 3.
Okay, the 85% that don't get awarded, what's the problem with their presentation? Is it something doesn't work? It's not, doesn't have a viable business plan? Is it pie in the sky, or what? What's the problem?
Yeah, it would be all of those. So we look at 3 things. We look at the quality of the project. So certain ones that are grant, they're focused on a specific need. And if it doesn't hit that need, then they're not good, and they won't get evaluated.
Okay, is the need evaluated by you, or is the need evaluated
by the individual agencies and the technical experts within those agencies? Now, some of them that are grant organizations push it out to peer reviews. So they'll bring in the experts in the material sciences and things. Contracting shops will do it into house, like DOD uses their experts within house.
I think with Mr. Smith, you talked about having business teams review it, didn't you? Or was that Mr.
No, sir.
Portnoy?
That was NSF.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. You talked about having business teams review the applications for viability of that applicant. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I think you had some numbers, or I was going to ask, I think, Mr. Portnoy, I believe, had some numbers on successes for his people.
Yes, sir. Our phase 1s are around 15 to 20%, and phase 2s 35 to 40%, and that more or less holds from year to year. We do have a mandated 2-tiered peer review process by NIH's Authorization Act, and so we use external peer review for phase 1, where we use both business and academic experts and commercialization experts, and we strive to have around 25 to 50% of our review panels be from the business side. And our second level of review is our advisory council, which is more of an administrative review prior to award being made.
Well, I think it's important. You mentioned to have a business folks on the council. I mean, if you have business people on your review boards, I mean, they understand how the real world works, whether this is viable or not. To me, that would be very important on your second team as well, which didn't act like, or you indicated not much participation there. Mr. Williams, you also talked about, mentioned NASDAQ a minute ago, which makes me think, is there plenty of capital available for a lot of folks whenever they come out of the program to be able to take this product or service to the next step, or have you seen a problem with funding at that next level for the outside funding?
Overall, we've seen a problem with that funding to the next level to get in because that group is more risk adverse than they had been in the past. Also, they don't like to invest in DoD projects as much as they like to do life sciences. So it depends on some of that, and half the program is DoD. So you typically won't get a venture investor in a DoD type project.
So, got a couple seconds left. Mr. Smith, do you like to comment on that?
I have to concur with Mr. Williams. From a venture capitalist position, when most of our contracts are going to be cost plus award fee of 6%, that's not going to drive them to that.
So that begs the question, do you go back to companies that have worked with you before as a preferential awardee versus a new company that comes to you with a new idea?
And the gentleman's time's expired, but go ahead and answer the question.
No, sir, because the first gate will be, does it technically address my challenge?
Is the idea or the product going to fit with your program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from New York, Ms. Meng, who's the ranking member of the Agriculture, Energy, and Trade Subcommittee, and whose district I visited last week and did a field hearing with her, and also the ranking member, a field hearing in her district, both in New York City. And it shows the bipartisan cooperation on this committee. So is recognized for 5 minutes, and we won't take any of that out of your 5 minutes.
I did look, you kept your word. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for coming out to our district in Queens, New York. We really enjoyed having you, and of course, as always, our ranking member who comes often. To the panel in general, we saw R&D budgets decrease as a result of sequestration. How has this in any way affected the programs at your agencies? And anyone's welcome to answer.
I mean, the first is numerical. If it's 3% of my extramural, if the R&D budget's going down, there will be less money there. We've also seen that my program managers will become more risk adverse. So my challenge is getting across that valley of death. But that's where my funds, the 2.5, the subsequent phase 2, I can encourage them to put their money in if they can see someone else is going to help progress that technology. But it's created a challenge. We have to work harder at it.
And so at NIH, during that year, we, of course, received an across-the-board cut that SBIR and STTR was affected proportionally, and as such, our awards were reduced in number that year. That rebounded when those cuts were restored the following year, and then in 2016, the current year, the NIH received a very large increase in its budget that was proportionally passed down to SBIR for a larger budget this year.
And to Mr. Williams, it would appear that universities have an ability to reach a significant number of potential SBIR participants. Has SBA partnered at all with these institutions to reach underrepresented groups? And what incentives or resources could we provide these institutions to encourage outreach to underrepresented groups?
Well, we've done two things. So we kicked off last year what we call our SBIR road tours, and so we went to 22 states, and many of those were held on university campuses, probably at least half of them. We also have a program called FAST, and then it's got sister funding, which called FAST to SBTTCs, and both of those programs typically go to university-oriented SBDCs or organizations with there. Part of the motivation and the requirement on that is to reach underrepresented communities, and the three categories are an underrepresented state, a minority, or women companies and STEM-oriented people.
And lastly, wanted to ask about minority and women-owned business participation, specifically with NSF and NIH. How have you found outreach? Which techniques have been successful in terms of outreach, whether it's to help firms succeed once they get an award, or to helping to lead an increase in applications and awards?
One of the programs that we have started to see significant success with is the I-Corps program, and it in part addresses the issue you raised in your previous question. In I-Corps, we fund a team which includes the technical expert, which is normally a faculty member at a university, and an entrepreneurial lead, normally a student that wants to start a company, and a business mentor who's an experienced entrepreneur or business person. Those three go through an intensive process of customer discovery to determine whether there's a commercial opportunity for the idea that they would like to bring forward and use to start a company. We've had more than 600 teams go through that training. About 39% of those teams have a woman as a member. So we're beginning to see an increase in the number of women that are engaged in those entrepreneurial training activities. And then we're beginning also to see significantly enhanced success rates in the SBIR program from teams that have gone through I-Corps training as a precursor.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a very challenging problem, as you no doubt are aware, and so we're taking a multi-pronged approach, both within the agency at NIH and with all of the agencies with a trans agency outreach group. And so we are doing things like participating in the outreach tour, making sure whenever we go on outreach that we require the organizers to find and identify their local women and minority-owned businesses, because they're the best sources for that. We also have been doing quite a bit in beginning to work with professional organizations such as Women in Bio and other related organizations, did webinars for them, and are working with HBCUs as recently as last week, doing a webinar and having an in-person meeting at NIH to bring in those communities as well.
The gentlelady's time's expired. Thank you very much. The gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mr. Smith, so it pains me as a soldier to say this, but as you are being very successful in the Navy, is other DoD agencies kind of modeling or looking after what you're doing and doing similar things, or are they trying to improve, or can you give me an idea of what you're doing that others are not doing?
The quick answer is yes. One of the things working with DoD is we continually discuss best practices, what will work with our organizations. Some of the challenges they have to be structural with them. But I've got to say my sister services are interested in transitioning the technologies to their warfighters.
Okay, and on that same line, there's a couple of us up here that sit on armed services, and acquisition is the #1 goal right now, how we can speed it up, how we can get it quicker to the warfighter, things of that nature. Can you give me an idea of issues that you are working on that speed up that process, that make the acquisition process not so bureaucratic?
Our challenge is, as Mr. Williams spoke to, the FAR and DFAR. So when my SBIR companies have to comply with the same regulations and procedures and processes that we expect of our defense primes, it's very difficult if it's 2 people in a garage. We work with that. I wish there was proportionality for my contracts, and we're working with that community, but most of the time they say we're only doing what Congress has directed we accomplish.
And to Mr. Williams, so there are ways to cut down the bureaucratic mess, the extra paperwork, the things that we duplicate. Can you give me an idea of what you've done to kind of bring that process down a little bit?
That's the process that I thought that we actually have not done a great job on. It's been a challenge, and it is a high area to focus on. We are bringing together the committees, all the agencies. We have working groups on phase 1, contracting and grants. We're going to have a workshop at our conference in May where we're going to bring a lot of the government people from all across the different agencies. It's a problem outside of just SBIR, as you kind of mentioned. It's across the board. It's much bigger than us. So it's something we need to tackle, but most of the requirements state that SBIR can't be different than another proposal or application or award. They have to follow the same processes, and what I've just seen in my 27 years is the requirements of paper have gone up to do more due diligence by those shops. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Well, I guess I can ask a question of the whole panel then. Is there something that we should be looking at here in the Small Business Committee that can make it easier? I think that a lot of us look at small businesses and we talk about the issues that either happens at government here at this level or at state level that makes small business do things on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis when biannually would be good enough to accomplish the mission. Is that something that we can look at here as a committee as a whole?
So what I think is we've been tasked in the reauthorization in the past has asked for studies to be done. Potentially a study that would look at that, but it would task, again, the heads of contracting and grants to report back to you on what can be done and potentially different for small businesses applying and not have to go through the same and do the same types of work that big businesses. And it's not just submitting the proposal, but as you mentioned, it's the auditing that happens, so DCAA and things like that. But I think getting those guys to kind of look at the problem might come up with some solutions, because they would be the ones that would have to implement it.
Well, and I won't speak for the chair, but I think that part of the mission of this committee is to make sure that small business can work efficiently and be accountable for what they do, but also have the ability to make money and succeed and expand and do all the things that we want them to do here in this great country. And with that, I'll yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton, who is the ranking member of the Health and Technology Subcommittee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I am one of the members who, like Mr. Knight, serve on armed services, and have been very pleased to see the Navy's robust implementation of their SBIR program. And Mr. Smith, I wanted to ask you a bit about the data summit idea that you mentioned in your testimony and you first proposed before the Senate. What exactly would that look like?
I think we get the appropriate communities together to ask some basic questions. What do you need, and how can we collect it and report it? I think the challenge is we've individually, between here, SBA, DOD, even the Navy, we've each got a different question and need a different piece of data. Whereas in acquisition assurance, we've never gone back and done a systems of systems approach to this challenge. I spend an inordinate amount of time reconciling data between multiple databases so I can get one answer to one question. So that's part of it. So I think it starts with possibly the Academy of Sciences sitting down going, what are all the reports we're doing? Why are we doing them? And are we answering the question that we initially intended to answer?
Mm-hmm. Is this summit something that could be covered in the 3% administrative budget? Is that could we pay for it through that?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So what are what do we need to do to move this forward? I mean, it seems like a reasonable idea. What do we need to sort of make this happen?
I'm not quite sure the quite language, but we can get back to you, sir, with that.
Yeah, and SBA will take a lead to start working that with the agencies, because we'd want to do a cross-agency and set something up and start to have a working group and work towards that. And we'll get back to you on that, so we'll take that lead.
Great. And what do we expect as a timeline on this? I mean, give us an idea
So,
of when we might see something that's actually coming together.
Let us start to have meetings within the next 3 months and start to lay out how we do it. What I know about this in the past, because we did it at DOD, it's not that you can just kind of say, okay, we'll do this, we'll have a report, and then it's over. Right. It's pretty much you start it and then you run it for years. But we need to get it started and figure out what are the issues that we need to gather, who's doing it, and kind of talk to and usually it's our data people that really have to get together. So we'll start in 3 months, and then we'll continue to give you updates on what's going on.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Gibson, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the panelists here today, and I think we're capturing some very good best practices we can circulate and look to continue to move towards excellence. And towards that end, Dr. Johnson, if you could talk for us, put for the record a little bit more detail on the Innovation Corps and how you've seen this flourish and how you work the funding for it.
Thank you. I-Corps is a relatively young program. It was started in 2011, and we have created a national innovation network that includes 7 nodes that are focused on delivering the curriculum that is part of the training that these teams receive. In addition, we have 51 sites that work collaboratively with those nodes. As we talked previously, 4 of those sites are at historically black colleges and universities, so we're trying to use this network to build relationships with underrepresented groups. And we've had, within just the National Science Foundation, we've had over 600 teams that have gone through the training at the national level. But I think that understates the training that's being delivered, because that doesn't count the training that's going on at sites. And so we find that, for example, in Milwaukee, the site there that has delivered the training now to about 27 teams just in the first year or year and a half. And so this is an intensive training where the goal of the training is for the team to understand what they have. Do they have an idea that is worthy of commercialization? And if so, what are the steps that they need to take? As I mentioned also, we're seeing increased numbers of proposals coming into the SBIR program, and we're seeing increased success rates for that. We're growing the I-Core program. In fact, we have a solicitation out now for renewal and possible new nodes that would be created. We also have a new site solicitation out for renewal and creation of new sites so that we can grow this network. And so our goal is that anyone, any entrepreneurially oriented faculty member or students or others that want this training will have access to this training.
Well, thank you. And likewise, Mr. Smith, how about any feedback you can share with regard to your guidebook? How well that's been received, and has that been shared with some of the other services as well?
Yes, sir. Actually, one of the services, I think, changed the cover and claimed it as their own. But we continually get evidence.
Well, I'm an Army guy, too, so hopefully it's not that.
Well, it might be there, sir. What we find is, just like everyone else, one of the philosophies I use with my team is make their jobs easier.
Yeah.
And we find the guidebook has made their job easier. So rather than finding that contracts officer who does maybe 1 or 2 SBIR contracts a month and needs to go through the whole FAR to find the one chapter, the guidebook has helped put that in one central location for them.
Yeah, that's excellent. And in seriousness, that's among the ways we got more excellence in our formations is really by just cross-leveling and sharing best practices. So I appreciate that. And related, you've talked about what you saw as the utility of the 2011 reauthorization, and you talk about how that rather significantly, dramatically reduced the award times and the distribution thereof. Can you put a finer point on that, on how you use that 3% and
what
talk
we
us
used
through?
with that 3% is we funded a contract center, and I call it my focus contract center, where they have a team who essentially are experts in doing SBIR contracts. Okay, so they do those every day. They've got their standardized templates in their formats. Instead of a 10-page cost proposal, they're able to do it with 2. Those kind of things, and that's where we've seen reductions, and that's actually one of the follow-ons we're doing is that team is now going to go out to my other contracting centers and provide training to them.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I just want to thank the whole panel for this. We do these hearings, of course, all the time. Oftentimes, we dilate on the problems, and that's important, but it's also good to have a hearing such as this where we can capture many of the good things that are going on. We can fertilize that, cross-fertilize that throughout. So thanks very much, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I'd like to now recognize a gentlelady from American Samoa, Ms. Reauthorizing, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Health and Technology. Recognize 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, would like to add my welcome to the panel. Thank you for being here today. My question is for Director Williams, I'm sorry. How are the R&D grants and contract advertised to small businesses that conduct R&D?
They're advertised through websites. So we push them out through SBIR.gov, but each agency, almost every agency every agency does have their own website also where they list their topics. But on SBIR.gov, you can go in and we pull all those topics available so anyone can search at any time, find out what topics are out there, but also what awards have been done in the past, what agencies work on those, and then push to the agency sites.
As a follow-up, as you are aware, the U.S. territories are geographically and technically isolated. Has there been any consideration for targeted outreach where R&D objectives, grants, or contracts directly or indirectly impact or benefit United States Pacific Island territories?
our focus has been on increasing our ability to get to anywhere, so web-based tools. So we've done an awful lot. So it's not that we don't target, or I don't think topics are targeted for specific regions of the country. They're targeted towards technology areas. What we try to do is actually provide training to areas so anyone can get the training they would need to submit proposals, understand the process, and things like that. DOE, for example, has done an excellent program, what they're called their Phase 0 program that they funded with the 3%. And that program, actually, if you are a woman, a minority, or an underrepresented area, which your island would fall under, they will give special assistance in helping write the proposals. So they provide additional assistance above and beyond. So there's programs like that, and we've been trying to bring that in to our SBIR.gov. We have a training book, a Train the Trainer book that we give out. So we're trying to get more boots on the ground training locally. So even if we were to come in and leave right away, that really doesn't, we found, work as well as having someone established in those local areas. And through programs like FAST programs, anyone can submit proposals to get cost and funding to be a trainer and to get the word out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. I'd now like to recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Hanna, who's chairman of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Workforce. Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Johnson, 15% of the overall applications are generally accepted, right? Of that 15%, which would reflect 100% of those who are accepted, you said that 32% are successful, 6 years, $1 million commercial. Can you talk to me about the other 68% and what that looks like in the real world?
Mm-hmm. We see, I guess, a couple of things that we see along the way. If you're right with the numbers on the Phase 1 grantees, and then Phase 1 grantees obviously can apply for a Phase 2 grant. We see approximately 80% of those actually make that application. So we're 20% are falling out after that Phase 1 process. And in some cases, they've gotten beyond the point where they need our help. In other cases, they've realized that the idea is not technically feasible, and they'll stop pursuit of that idea. So there is some loss between the Phase 1 and then the transition to Phase 2. I should point out that, and I'd be happy to share some of this information with you all if you'd like. We have a data collection program that we created over a decade ago, where we actually follow these grantees at a 3-year point, a 5-year point, and an 8-year point. And so we reach out to those grantees to find out, one, are they still in business? 2, are they generating jobs? Are they generating revenue? Have they solved the problems that they needed to achieve commercialization? And so we gather as much information, and that's through it's a time-intensive process, because it's through a personal phone call that we actually reach out and gather this information. And so to answer your question, though, of the reasons are all across the map. We see some teams that disintegrate. We see technology that just cannot be resolved. And so there are a number of things.
I mean, naturally, you're accepting a certain amount of risk. You have to, by definition. So do you think you're comfortable with the matrix you use to do that? Should there be more failure? Should there be less failure?
Well, we feel like that we are comfortable with the decision-making process, because, as I mentioned earlier, we do bring in the review process both technical experts and business experts. So we're actually getting a very solid look at the proposal from the very beginning. And we do that again at Phase 2 when we get ready to award. We do that again for the Phase 2B if we get ready to sponsor someone in that. And so we have a due diligence process that we believe is as thorough as it can be.
I would guess that some go way beyond $1 million, so that
they do.
Using a simple percentage doesn't really give you the whole dynamic of the outcome or the success of the program overall. Can you talk about that, if it's even right?
In fact, no, you're exactly right, because we do see, and in fact, we have the data that shows the total amount of revenue generated by that collection of companies, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars generated.
So that might be a much better thing to look at than the number you have on your page.
Absolutely. I think it's an excellent point, and we do have that data. My goal was simply to demonstrate that phase 2B is actually doubling the success rate for that measure that
But
we
you
use.
you don't do yourself any favor by doing it like you did it.
Okay,
I think. I mean, I could be wrong.
great. Well, no, I appreciate that input.
Well, thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I'd now like to yield to the ranking member for a final question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just cannot leave this hearing without stating for the record that I do have an issue with the fact that one of the statutory objectives of the SBIR program is to increase the participation of minority and women-owned businesses in the R&D arena. And I want to hear your commitment that you're going to be working with us in seeking solutions to this issue. We cannot deny the fact that the face of America is changing, and especially in the small business sector. And so by neglecting this, we are neglecting the ultimate goal of fostering innovation. And so I want to work with you throughout this process before we come to drafting final legislation on the reauthorization. But I do want to see this issue addressed. It just, for NHA, the share has declined from a peak of 3.5% in 2006 to less than 2% in 2014. That is unacceptable, and we need to address it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back.
I just want to hear
Oh, did you
from
wanna hear
each one of you.
All right.
Yes, please, that you're going to be working to work with us. Okay.
You have our commitment.
Yes, we're committed to it. In fact, we are, I've asked one of my program directors to lead the effort on reaching underrepresented minorities for the division as a whole.
And women, yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I agree, and I think we even need to go deeper and look at principal investigators, not just the ownership of the company, but really who are the STEM people doing it and try to start there.
Thank you.
The chair would note that all the witnesses responded in the affirmative. And I just have one last question myself. As you can see, this is being broadcast here, this whole hearing, internally on our system here, and actually on our website. Small businesses all over the country have access to this, not just today, but whenever they'd like to look at it. So we're actually being viewed probably by tens of people all over the country. So my question is this: for those consumers that may be watching today or sometime in the future, could any of you name, and you've named some of the products that have actually come out of this, could you name any products that a consumer out there might be able to relate to, either something they might purchase or something that might make their life a little bit better, get them someplace faster or more safely or whatever? So whoever has something, I'd like to. Dr. Portnoy?
Sure, I think the easiest recognizable technology that the public will recognize is the Sonicare toothbrush, which was funded by SBIR Technology and Biomedical
You
Space.
said the Sonicare.
Sonicare toothbrush, the
toothbrush.
electric vibrating toothbrush,
Okay,
funded under SBIR when it was a small company.
thank you. Anybody else?
Qualcomm, many people know of Qualcomm. 70% of the chips that are in all your iPhones are developed by Qualcomm, and that was started with SBIR. iRobot's another one that a lot of people have their Roombas around, and all that was started with the DoD side, developed it for going into caves, and then they transitioned it to a commercial sector.
Very good.
Well, in addition to Qualcomm, obviously, Symantec is another example. It's a security company that was funded initially with SBIR funding. And so Qualcomm and Symantec are very large success stories. I want to mention just a couple, though, that are very recent emerging companies that I think people can relate to. There's a company called Flow Design Sonics, which has developed a water purification technology based on ultrasonic technology that can, take dirty, contaminated water in and produce clean, drinkable water out. It's a very useful technology, and I think one that's going to have tremendous impact as we move forward.
Okay. Mr. Smith, you want to weigh in?
I'd bring up Emily again. It's just interesting that that technology is being used by fast water rescue teams in America, throughout the world. It's an enjoyable job I have working with the best and brightest in the world. And when you see an engineer that has created a technical solution and see the smile and the glow on their face. It only gets larger when you can look them in the eye and say, and I know you saved lives.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I would just conclude by saying that the SBIR and STTR programs are good programs, but we can always do better, as the ranking member indicated in that particular area, and we can do better, I think, in other areas as well. And we will take the suggestions that we've heard today and by the members here in their questions that we've heard, the responses and the answers from you, and try to incorporate that information into the reauthorization legislation that we'll be putting together in the very near future. And we want to thank you all for your testimony. I would ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you.